Welcome to, or back to, Forgotten Hollywood, the channel where I take you back in time to show you the movies, shows, and actors that have faded over the years. Now you'll notice this is a different format than I would normally do. This is the format I use for my Modern Monday videos. However, I'm seeing if I can streamline my content creation and get videos out faster. So we'll see how this works. If you saw my video on Monday, you know that I absolutely love A Christmas Carol. One of my favorite stories. I've seen a dozen versions, at least, in TV shows and movies, plays, everything. I love this story. And I'm going to give you my top 10 Christmas Carol movies. Now, I'm not counting TV specials in the sense of characters from a regular TV show put into the Christmas Carol story. Not counting those. Made for TV movies are fair game, but they have to be a movie. So, let's begin. Number 10, The Man Who Invented Christmas. Okay, I'm breaking my own rule here because I usually cut off at the year 2000 because I consider 2000 and later to be modern movies as opposed to classic Hollywood, Golden Age, and all that. But The Man Who Invented Christmas is one of my very, very favorite versions of A Christmas Carol. And yes, it is a version of A Christmas Carol. It's also a biopic for Charles Dickens. But it is telling the story of how he wrote it. And you see the writing process as he tells the story, but it tells the actual story while he's writing it. And also you have all the characters. You have Scrooge, you have Marley, you have the ghosts, you have the people, you have Fuzzy-Wig, you have everyone. And when he is communicating with them, he can see and hear them as if they are real. So it's just a really interesting take on it. It tells the story. I'm putting it at number 10 because it's not a true adaptation, but it's a fascinating movie. Highly recommend. Number 9, Scrooge. This is what you might call a creative adaptation. It is set in the 1980s when it came out. To my knowledge, it's the earliest modern version of A Christmas Carol. There have, of course, been many, but this one was the first I'm aware of. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, if there's another one that's older that I didn't know about. And so, because it's the 80s, it doesn't follow the events exactly. Of course, you don't have workhouses in the 1980s, but you have homeless shelters. The character of Scrooge is named Frank Cross, and instead of being a moneylender, he's a TV executive. This fits because moneylenders were seen as heartless, money-grubbing misers, really. Then you've got TV executives, which are seen as heartless, money-grubbing promoters. Apples and oranges, it's basically the same thing. This one has several things that are different. It includes the love interest that Scrooge lost, except he didn't lose her decades earlier and she remarry and have children, as most of the versions show. It had just been a few years. I think maybe less than 10. And she comes back into his life when he calls her. And he's able to reconnect to her. This is the only Scrooge that ever gets that chance. So that makes it really creative. There are some things about this I don't really like. I don't like all the liberties that they took. Their version of Marley kind of grosses me out a little bit. And there's no chains. There's no emphasis of punishment. He's just a ghost. The fetters are so important to show visually that this person is being punished for the evil they did in their lifetime. Number 8, An American Christmas Carol. Now, I know I said the last one was the first modern retelling. This one is not a modern retelling in the sense that it was set at the time that it came out, which was 1979. This is set during the Great Depression. This one stars Henry Winkler, and it's interesting because they cast a young man as Scrooge. Well, was not that old, so they had to age him up to play Scrooge, and then they took the age makeup off for him to play his younger self. Not how they usually do it. They either age them down, or more often than not, they just cast a young actor who looks kind of like them. To be like, yeah, that's the young self. So you have Henry Winkler playing Scrooge, and he does pretty well. And it is a good adaptation for being set in the Great Depression, which lends itself very well to A Christmas Carol because there was so much poverty, because there was so much suffering, that having a miserly man taking what little these people have during a time when jobs are scarce, money is scarce, food is scarce, is just cruel. This is one where the ghosts are played by actors from other parts of the movie. Now, these aren't spirits who have come in, they're just taking the form of people he has essentially stolen from. And it is an interesting take, and it probably was done for budgetary reasons, less actors to pay. But it works. Number 7, A Christmas Carol. Okay, there's going to be several on the list with this name. Just fair warning. But this is the animated one from 2009. Again, I'm breaking my rule here. I'm going into 2009. But this is a pretty decent adaptation, specifically because of how close it sticks to the book. The Ghost of Christmas Past even has the cap that was mentioned in the book and is left out of most versions that snuffs out their light. And it's also really good at showing Scrooge as a miser. There is a strange take on some of the characters. I was really thrown by Martha, who is Bob Cratchit's oldest daughter and seems to be descended from Goliath. Also, one sticking point that I have is the way they did the ghosts. Marley was fine. The Ghost of Christmas Past was a candle. The Ghost of Christmas Past has always been a person. They were originally a person with light coming out of their head. But the cap that is shown in the books and described is the shape of the device used to snuff out a candle. So they just ran with that, and the ghost was a literal candle. But the thing I didn't like, the thing I couldn't stand, was the Ghost of Christmas Present became the Ghost of Christmas Future. 3 spirits, not 2. Which one taking 2 roles? 3 spirits. And it was also kind of creepy because he starts laughing maniacally, turns into a skeleton, and then from there turns into the Grim Reaper. They seem to add a lot of things just for the sake of looking cool that didn't add anything to the story, like Scrooge getting shrunk and sliding across a rooftop on an icicle. I didn't know what they were doing with that other than it looked interesting. Things that look cool because they work, like if you look at the Nutcracker Ballet and the tree growing to signify that Claire is shrinking. That's a beautiful spectacle and has a point. Scrooge being shot into the air and flying past the moon at the end of the past sequence, I don't know what they were doing. Number 6, Scrooge. Not to be confused with Scrooge from 1988, this one is actually the oldest movie on our list from 1935. It has a very creative use of the effects. They couldn't afford to do the camera tricks, such as making the transparent man. So the most creative thing was Marley. The Marley sequence comes and Scrooge is terrified. The door opens and there's nothing there. But Scrooge is terrified. And you hear a voice say, "Look well, Ebenezer, for only you can see me." Clever. So, saves time on makeup, saves time on money on costumes, saves money on chains because Marley is invisible. And Seymour Hicks was very good with the ghost because he was acting so he can see him. He knew where he was on the stage and what he was doing when he was acting against an empty chair. And it was pretty decent for covering the story. It hit all the main points. Didn't hit every point, but it hit the main points. And that was really good. One sticking point I had is Scrooge looked homeless. I mean, I get that he is a miser, but it looked like he couldn't afford a comb. Or at least didn't bother to buy one. He just didn't look like the richest man in London. He looked like he was lucky if he could get a sandwich. Number 5, A Christmas Carol. Another version called Christmas Carol. This one stars Alastair Sim from 1951. And it was very good at following the book. Again, it doesn't hit every single little detail or point, but it does a really good job of showing Scrooge as a miser. He also looks slightly homeless, but not quite as bad as Seymour Hicks. But they do leave out and they kind of rearrange a few details. Like Scrooge always comes to the future and immediately is in the stock exchange or hearing the businessman talk or wherever that is. But this one, it went immediately to Bob Cratchit's house. So before he knew his own fate, he knew the fate of Tiny Tim, which was an interesting take to rearrange that. But still, it was a decent portrayal and stayed pretty true to the books as far as the characters and look and story went. Number 4, Mickey's Christmas Carol. This is the version of my childhood. This is probably the first version of Christmas Carol I ever saw. I did hear a critique that it wasn't good because it wasn't Mickey's Christmas Carol because Mickey was hardly in it. And I'm sitting here going, you want Mickey to play Scrooge? That doesn't really fit, especially when you have a character whose name is literally Scrooge McDuck. Scrooge was not invented for this story. This came out in 1983. Scrooge came out in the comics decades before that. He was already a well-established character, and it fit just perfectly to have him playing Scrooge and Mickey as Bob Cratchit. And this also does a really good job of showing Scrooge to be a miser. He even laments to Cratchit after throwing out the people collecting for the poor. He says, well, what's this world coming to, Cratchit? You work all your life to get money, and people want you to give it away. But it just does a really good job of portraying Scrooge as an unlikable miser in a child-friendly way. There is one hang-up that I have, and that's they cast Daisy as the love interest for Scrooge, Isabel, in the past sequence. Now, but the issue I have with this, and I know Daisy is a well-known, well-loved character. She's a duck, just like Scrooge. That's fine. But the thing was, Donald was in the movie too. He played Nephew Fred. And Nephew Fred has a wife. Would it have been so difficult to put Daisy as Fred's wife? And now, you might argue, well, then there wouldn't be a love interest for Scrooge. In 1953, a comic came out about Scrooge in the Gold Rush days. And it introduced his longtime love interest, Goldie. Now, those of you who are fans of DuckTales might remember Goldie as being Scrooge's girlfriend, but she was first introduced in the comics in 1953, 30 years before this movie. Instead of having her film debut being in Mickey's Christmas Carol, she had to wait 4 more years to be introduced in DuckTales. I just feel this is a missed opportunity. Number 3, A Muppet's Christmas Carol. The best part about this movie is that when Michael Caine agreed to play opposite of Kermit the Frog, he was going to do it as if he was with the Royal Shakespeare Company. He is a serious actor, and he is playing one of the most iconic roles in history. And he did it amazingly well. opposite a frog, which worked beautifully. Another great thing about this is because it was for children, there's a great emphasis on the spirit of the holiday. And they even say, let's make this last all year. They also take a lot from the original source material. They include the line about the poor should die to decrease the surplus population. That gets echoed back to Scrooge when he's looking at the little tiny frog with the crutch sitting at the table and coughing. And it's just strong emphasis on the spirit of the book, what Dickens was trying to convey when he wrote it. He was trying to get people to think about themselves, think about how they treat others, think about the poor around them, how they can help. And my favorite thing about this version is that Gonzo, as the narrator, is Charles Dickens, which is kind of funny to think about, just Gonzo being Charles Dickens and Rizzo doesn't believe him. And so he's telling the story to prove to Rizzo that he is in fact Charles Dickens. It's just an interesting way to introduce the story. Number 2, A Christmas Carol. Yet another with the same title. This one came out in 1999 and stars Star Trek legend Patrick Stewart. This one is very true to the book, leaving out only minor details. One of my very favorite things about this movie is Bernard Lloyd's version of Marley. He's so remorseful, so emotional, not the deadpan that you usually get with the ghost. You can just sense how bad he feels about the way he treated people in his lifetime, and now how he can see suffering that he can do nothing about. And you actually see the other ghosts lamenting and wanting to help and having lost the power and just tormented by this. And a cool detail about it is if you pay attention to the scene where you see all the ghosts in chains, you will see all different time periods. I mean, I saw people that looked like they were in Shakespearean garb, and people who looked like they were in 18th century garb and 19th century garb. And it was just really cool to see all the different ghosts throughout the ages, all suffering and lamenting and demonstrating to Scrooge what he was facing. The only thing that knocked this version out of first place for me was Tiny Tim. I don't know why, but people seem to think that they need to cast Tiny Tim between the ages of 9 and 12 when he's supposed to be the youngest or one of the youngest children of Bob Cratchit. And Bob Cratchit's supposed to have 2 children of working age, one of them that is just reaching working age, and truth be told, in 1843, working age was about 12. So Bob's supposed to have 6 kids. The oldest is working age. The second is just reaching working age, which would be around the age of 12. And then his youngest is 10. It's just a little weird with the math there. In my mind, Tiny Tim should be tiny. Number 1, A Christmas Carol. Come to the last one on the list with the same name as 3 or 4 others. This one is starring George C. Scott. I love this version. It is very true to the book, extremely detailed. It includes commentary during the past, present, and future sequences, so you know Scrooge's train of thought, you know what he's thinking, what he's feeling, how he's changing as he goes through this ordeal. And the most important thing that made it number 1 and beat out everything else is it is the only live action version of A Christmas Carol that I have found where Tiny Tim is tiny. The actor who played Tiny Tim was only 6 years old when this movie came out. So he's actually very young. And that really helps the character. You feel the sympathy for this tiny crippled child. It really works with the casting and the dialogue and the costumes, and everything just comes together in the perfect storm to make A Christmas Carol, just the way Dickens intended it. So that's my top 10 list. What did you think of my picks? Did you agree or disagree with any of the rankings? Did you think I missed any? Please let me know. I'm always looking for a good version of A Christmas Carol to watch during the holiday season. But let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. Please let me know what you think of this format. If I should continue this with my regular videos, or if I should keep this just for Mondays. Be sure to like and subscribe. Click that bell for notifications, since YouTube doesn't like to actually tell people when someone has posted. Let me know if there's any other top 10 lists you would like to see, and I will catch up with you next time.